welcome to another episode of the Dedicated Sportsman Podcast. Been about a week or so since we did an episode, just with time constraints and everything. It's tough trying to push out an episode every week, when you got a job and everything too. Got a lot going on lately, but I got a few pretty good episodes lined up for us for the next few weeks. Tonight we're going to be interviewing the Salerno brothers from upstate New York. They're actually, in the Adirondacks, so more like the Champlain area. These guys are a third generation family of deer hunters. They've been tracking big bucks up in the Adirondack Mountains for several years. We'll be getting into some of their tactics that they use for, bare ground hunting. A lot of the time they're just still hunting and trying to track down a nice buck. But we'll also get into how you go about tracking a buck in the snow. It'll be a pretty good conversation, so I'm looking forward to it. A couple updates. Turkey season's been over with now for a couple weeks now, so we're getting ready for deer season. Last weekend we got some trail cameras out. We're starting to maneuver them around and get them in the spots where we need them to be for this coming deer season. The woods are they're growing up pretty good, pretty thick out there. The apple trees on some of the state land we hunt are actually looking pretty good this year, which is good. The last few years we had a late frost and a late snow after the apple trees had bloomed, and they ended up getting killed by that snow. So we haven't had apples here on this chunk of state land that we hunt in quite a while. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that. I think we'll have some apples on the ground, which is going to help for that first couple weeks of early season. Those deer like to be on those apples early season, so that'll be good. I just got myself into a new kayak, so we'll be taking that out a little bit, doing some fishing. I'm in a couple of these kayak tournaments. First time I've done any of this stuff, so it'll be interesting. Be a learning experience for sure. On our YouTube channel there, hopefully we'll be able to bring you some fishing content there. And obviously we're on Facebook and Instagram too, so if you guys are following us there, we greatly appreciate it. We'll be getting into this interview with the Salerno brothers today, and then next week I've got a gentleman from Pennsylvania. His name is Jerry Lannon. He's a pro staffer for Fox Pro. We'll be diving into some tips and tactics for predator hunting. I'm sure that'll be a pretty good conversation too. And then the following week we'll have on Joe and Scott from New York Saddle Hunter to discuss some of the newer topics about saddle hunting. It's been around for a long time, but the last few years has really gotten big as far as the saddle hunting goes. I've been hunting out of a saddle myself for the last 3 years, and I use a couple different climbing methods. I use a set of 4 sticks. Sometimes I'll 1 stick. Sometimes I'll SRT. But these two guys, they're big into the rope climbing. They actually started their page on Facebook and YouTube, New York Saddle Hunter, and that's where I picked up on how to do the SRT climbing, which is a pretty good tactic if you have the ability to set up spots ahead of time. As far as presets go, get a paracord loop up into a tree, and then you just use a single rope, pull that up into the tree, you climb that rope. You don't have to worry about bringing in any sticks or anything. It's a pretty efficient method. And then once you get to the top, you set your tether and everything, and then when you're ready to go, you just rappel out of the tree. If any of you guys are familiar with a single stick method, that's kind of the same thing. You rappel back out of the tree after you're done hunting. It's pretty cool, and it's a lot faster than having to climb down with a set of sticks and pack up your sticks and everything. So it's a pretty good method. The only problem with that one is you got to have a tree that's got a crotch in the tree that's, you know, like 30 feet up. You don't want some of these trees that, have crotches way, way up. You don't have a rope long enough to reach them. So you just got to find the right tree for it. That's all. We hope you guys enjoy this episode with Salerno brothers. Be a good conversation. Enjoy. And if you guys are first tuning in, if you could leave us a review and a 5-star rating, it would really help us out here. Try to get some more listeners. If you enjoy the few episodes that we have had, share them with your friends. We're trying to get as much reach as we can. It's just tough getting started out as far as finding people that are interested in the topics we're talking about. So if you could share with your friends and family, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks for tuning in.
Your hands start shaking, your heart gets to thumping, your knees get to knocking, and your mind starts racing. It's a feeling like you never felt before. Have you coming back for more? Bug fever, gonna get you, boy. Bug fever, have you praying to the Lord?
Doing great. Thank you.
So, you want to give the listeners a little bit of backstory on your family history and your experience in hunting in the Adirondacks for anybody that doesn't know who you guys are?
Well, I would say it all started back with my dad back in, in the 50s, early 50s. As a young man, he was hunting the Adirondacks with his brother and a few friends. And I think that all started, right out of high school for him, which was around 1951. And then, he started shooting some good bucks back in the early 50s, and then he ended up going away and playing professional ball for the Dodgers. I think from 52 to 56.
Right, 51. I think 51 to 59. He was on the road a lot.
Yes, he was traveling, all over the country playing Class B all the way to AAA ball. So when he came home in the fall, after baseball season, it was pretty much hunting season. So, he started at a young age, and then I think, as the family developed, he got all of us guys into, sports and tagging along in the woods with him and our Uncle Paul Salerno. And I think that's how the hunting thing started for all of us guys starting out as young kids.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to live right by the Adirondacks, so we were always outdoors, starting with your BB gun and then your pellet gun and then your 22, and we were hunting rabbits, ducks, pheasant, whatever you could, shoot back then. But I think the main thing that started, what I understand is my father's older brother, when he was young, the family used hunting as just to survive. You'd bring home deer to eat, rabbit, pheasant, whatever they could to eat, because there was 7 of them in the family. So hunting was it. That's how you kind of survived.
Yes. I think it was more of a tradition back then too. I think, a lot of those guys that worked for a living, a lot of those guys on the weekends, they were all in the woods, either fishing or duck hunting, ice fishing in Fort Henry through the ice, and then, deer hunting. And then in the summer, those guys were always playing golf or, town team baseball, basketball. Back then, it was just, a lot going on.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of hunting families really started, was trying to put food on the table, especially back in those days. I know kind of the same thing in our family. My grandfather pretty much started the whole thing, going hunting, and, they started out bow hunting and gun hunting, in the southern zone of New York. And then, led from, my grandfather down to my uncle and my father, and now me and my brother, and hopefully soon my two daughters.
Nice.
Got to keep that tradition going. These young kids, you got to keep them interested. Instead of being on computers and on your phone and, distractions through the internet. It's just, for me, I don't think it's good. You got to go out and you got to be outside playing and use your imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah, the technology is probably the worst thing that's happened to us as a society, because everybody's glued to a cell phone or a TV nowadays.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed too, coming out of the woods or going into the woods and seeing, a few other hunters here and there, and it's very rare to see a young kid tagging along. You just, I see a lot of middle-aged guys. I don't see a lot of younger guys or kids that are getting back into the mountains and humping it and, grinding it out and learning the tradition of being a woodsman. I think the sport's in trouble in that aspect as far as the younger generation getting into it.
The whole woodsman thing is like a dying thing nowadays.
Yes.
So
What's funny, Brian, what's funny is, pretty much my whole over 40 years of hunting, I always use just a compass, one in your pocket. You pull it out and look at it.
Right.
But the past 4 or 5 years, I've tried to use a Garmin, and I'll use it, but inside me, I just don't really care about always looking at the Garmin. I'm always looking at my little pin compass and just going by your compass.
Right.
I'm just not into that technology. Yeah, it's fun that you could track it on your Garmin or maybe your phone, but where we hunt, usually phones we don't have any type of reception, so you're always looking at your pin compass. You're pulling your compass out and just going by your compass and the lay of the land.
Right.
Right. Yeah. When you're looking down at that Garmin, you're not focusing on what's out in front of you or what could be out in front of you. I think I understand some people need to use it to navigate around and feel more comfortable as far as getting out of the woods. But we were brought up, you either had the hand compass or the pin on, and you kind of just follow and hunted the lay of the land. And if you had sun, if the sun was out, you kind of watched the way the sun was going, and you picked around. And I never really worried about getting out of the woods. I've always felt comfortable getting back in the woods and not worrying about having to struggle to get out. It's just it came natural to me to work my way in the dark and work my way out.
Yeah, I like to use Onyx just to remember exactly where a tree is that I want to climb into in the morning and stuff, to get in there in the dark. It definitely helps, but I can pretty much go wherever I need to go and know where I'm going. Being able to find a specific spot in the dark is a little bit more challenging, but knowing how to get in and out, I've always been pretty good at being able to tell where I'm going in the woods.
Yes.
Yeah, what's funny is when I go in, your mind, you don't use these things. In my mind, I remember
Right.
where you're going. At first you look at a map and you study the map and you memorize the maps. So when you go in the woods, you know what mountain you're going towards, or is there what direction you have to head, or what, when you want to come out, what direction. It's a mental thing. You're using your mind and you're remembering through that map, and you're reading that map, so you know how to do it instead of using a Garmin. To me, it's easier to read a map than it is to have a Garmin or your phone. Or that's the way I've always done it, and it's kind of instilled in me.
Yep.
Just like landmarks too, knowing what landmarks are in the woods, as far as
Right.
stone fences. And, there might be a unique tree somewhere where you're going that you can key in on. And there's a lot of stuff that you can pick up on, and you know exactly where you're at and know where you're going. So your guys' big game up there is tracking in the snow. But the last few years in the Adirondacks, we've been lacking with snow. So how have you guys adapted and still been able to have success up there?
Well, I mean, the last 10 years, with the lack of snow, I mean, we have, it seems like you get snow for a day and then you lose it, or you get some crusty stuff. It's nice to be able to track and find the bucks, get back to where we normally find, a lot of good runways, signpost rubs, areas where we know the bucks are traveling through to get on the track. But, the last few years, it's tougher and tougher. There's more posted land. You're tracking a buck, and, you're working an area, and boom, you come to a posted sign. Everybody in the Adirondacks now seems like is posted land. It's getting tighter and tighter. There's more and more anti-hunters. So lack of snow, it's hurt us, but we kill them on the leaves too. We get back into areas where we're seeing good buck sign, and we know where there's pockets of does, and we concentrate in those areas, and we keep working those areas until somebody gets a crack at a good one. So, we don't need the snow to kill big bucks. I mean, we probably killed more bigger bucks on leaves. I think it's just instilled in us guys to put our pants on every morning, grind it out, and I think all of us guys have a lot of desire to kill a buck every year, and I think it's the determination to get back in the woods, put the time in every day, and grind it out until we kill a buck. It's not rocket science. It's reading the sign, reading the following the rubs, find your rub lines, find your pockets of does, and when you get that 2 or 3 weeks when it's time, when the bucks start making mistakes, that's when we're grinding it out in the dark. We're coming out in the dark, and we're putting our time in to kill our bucks.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing is when there's no snow, you just have to cover a lot of ground. I mean, it's tough climbing some of these hills and getting back in there to where, these bucks like to hide. They don't want to be around. They're not in the lowland. You want to kill these smart bucks that have lived a long time, and you just have to cover the ground, and you got to put in your miles in order to catch a buck without snow.
Right.
Now, are you guys utilizing any trail cameras or any summer scouting during the summertime? Or are you guys going back in the woods trying to get an idea where the deer are hanging, or trying to figure out what kind of food sources you're going to have?
Yes, I would say in the last 10 years, I put out 5 to 10 trail cameras every year. I usually put them out in the spring, and I check them, move them around a little bit. But it has helped because I think it's, as we've all aged, me being the youngest, we ain't got the legs. I mean, I'm injured, Randy's injured, we're banged up from our jobs.
Right.
Mentally and physically, it's taken a toll. The trail cameras have helped because I've been able to narrow down, where we're seeing good buck sign, so we can shoot right into those areas, and I think it's created less stress on our bodies as far as having to cover all the miles that we used to, because we can't go like we used to. So, I have to put the cameras out to try to narrow it down as to where we're seeing good bucks or good pockets of does, and then come fall, come hunt season, we concentrate in those areas. So, it's getting more difficult, I know, for myself every year because of injuries to be able to do what I have to do. So I've had to make adjustments to the to the way I hunt, and at times I think it's helped me because I think I've actually slowed down. I'm seeing more. You don't have to go 10 miles to kill a big buck. You got to be smart, and you got to try to pattern him and find out, catch him somewhere where he's going to make a mistake.
Right. And also over the years, I mean, we've been hunting over 40 years, 45 years. We hunt in specific areas. We probably got about 15, maybe 20 areas that we go to. And just through your experience of what you've seen in the past, we've already kind of narrowed down where we've seen big bucks. But what we do is also we expand, and we also every year we try to go to different places and try to find out if there's bigger bucks, or if we're to get into a good area where there are bucks. So we're always expanding out from our regular areas that we do hunt every year. But like Tim said, as you age, boy, it's just tougher and tougher to climb these mountains back there. It's tough, not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely speak for that as well. I mean, like I was saying, I hunt with my uncle and his one good friend, and they're both 165, and the other one, my uncle's friend, is 72, and they're still out there pretty much every day. But you can tell that their age has caught up with them now. So
Yeah.
they're a lot slower than what they once were, but they still have the drive to be out there.
Which is great. That's great that they're still getting out and getting some enjoyment out of it, because I mean, it's if you go into the Adirondack Mountains and you're a beginner hunter and you're finding a place to hunt and you want to get, it's very discouraging. It's vast. You're not seeing a lot of deer, and then to try to put a bow in a mature buck, back when you're hunting, 10,000 square acre parcels of state land, 30,000 acres, and you're going back in there, it's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Right.
So for us guys, when we go in, it's teamwork. We line up, and we know each other's pace, and we know the mountains, and we know a lot. We know the funnels, we know the notches, we know areas where these bucks are going to try to get away from us, and we use those areas to your advantage. Because if I've got a brother or a cousin, whoever's hunting down below me or above me, you key off each other. I mean, if like Randy has a tendency to hunt a little slower than me. So, if you know you're out in front of him a little bit, you may post up in a notch for 30, 40 minutes and take advantage of, some quiet time, take a little break. He may jump a buck, he may swing out in front, try to cut back. These bucks will jump them sometimes on leaves. They'll run in front of us a little bit. They'll hook back, make a sharp left or right, and we kill a lot of bucks that way. So hunting as a team, staying fairly close to each other. We try to stay 100 to 500 yards. We know each other's paces. The little pinch spots, notches, sides of ridges where we know the bucks travel. We set up in those areas when we aren't lined up, and we killed hundreds of bucks, pushing them to each other, not making drives, but just still hunting, and just bumping them in front of you, jumping them, and they're just sneaking around, and you're able to put a bullet in one.
Yeah, I think that's, as far as jumping the buck, I think a lot of people underestimate the fact that a buck isn't going to run to the next county when you jump them. They're going to try to find the next patch of cover to lay back down. A lot of times they may only run a few hundred yards, or like you said, try to hook behind you. You're almost hunting rabbits with horns.
Exactly.
Right. I've noticed, when you kick these bucks up, though, they always seem to want to climb. They always
Yeah.
want to go uphill.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if it's cover or they're trying to wind you, or they're just trying to get away from you. But for some reason, boy, those bucks are always going climbing uphill every time you jump them.
It could be one of two things. Either they're trying to get a better vantage point, or they know they're being chased by a person and they know that we can't get above them.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why we try to shoot in the woods, and we try to get to a higher elevation in the mornings.
Right.
And we've always had a tendency of trying to hunt downhill. So we get up high where we feel that there's bucks down below us. Then we start picking our way down. Left, right. I may we zigzag. Some of the stuff we do is just, hey, it's just, you do what you got to do to shoot a buck. And, I may hunt to my left for 400 or 500 yards and curl back to my right for 400 or 500 yards. If I get up on a shelf somewhere where I use it to my advantage, I'll walk that shelf back and forth, peeking down. It's just, it's cat and mouse all day long for the whole season until you can put a bullet in one.
Yeah, it's tough up there. With no snow, it is real tough. I remember when I was hunting back in the mid 70s to the late 70s, and every hunting season we had 2 feet of snow, 3 feet of snow. I'm talking in November, end of October. We had it through the whole season. And back then, when you had that much snow, what was happening was these deer were grouping up. There was 4, 5, 6, 7 of them all together. They started to herd up early. So I remember, tracking. All of a sudden, you look, and there's 4, 5, 10 deer all together.
Yep.
And back then, when you had that snow, boy, it was so much easier to see deer, not only because of the snow, but they herded up early because of that snow. And we shot a lot of bucks back in the mid to late 70s, early 80s. But then all of a sudden, it just changed to where you got very little snow, and it didn't stick around.
Right.
So now, as far as the rare occasion that you do get snow, what are you looking for when you find a track? Like, how are you differentiating a track, between a big buck and maybe a doe or a smaller buck that you don't have any interest in trying to track?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I'm always looking at the stagger of him. If he's in tight and narrow, then I know it's a younger buck. As I'm following more adult. When I see that big impression and he's taking a wider stance, and I'm watching him and just tracking him, you take him for 100 yards, see what he's doing. When you see that bigger, wider stance on that track, long strides, and you can see he's pushing it good, then it's something I'll get on and go. I'll go fast. I'll go slow. I just, you just kind of use a little common sense. You follow him, see what he's doing. If he's feeding, if you you look at the snow, see what kind of snow you got. Watch him, see what he's doing. If you see he's legging it, then I'm legging it. If I see him slow down, then I slow down, and I'm watching. And when I'm tracking, I'm always keeping an eye above me because they always seem to hook uphill and lay uphill, and they want to look down on their back track. That's what a mature buck will do. And when I was a lot younger, I remember just go and go, and let these guys know, hey, pick me up. I'll be out on one of the roads at dark, and you just grind it, and you jump them a few times, and sometimes he gets away, and sometimes you get lucky and get a bullet. But it's gotten, when you get in your 50s and you start tracking these bucks in the Adirondacks, and he's climbing in that steep terrain, 2,000-3,000 feet. It's tough. It's tough to get a bullet in, and it's getting tough for me. I can tell you that.
How are you able, what are you looking at on the track as far as being able to tell the age of the track?
Me personally, I mean, it just depends on what kind of snow you have. Fluffy snow.
Okay.
If it's fluffy snow, you'll see them dragging
Right.
and they're taking those long strides. And then when you see them stop, you kind of look around and see them feeding. If you can catch, like some of the antlers in the snow, you get a little see the impressions of the antlers. But like Tim said, it's those long strides and they're wider, wide in the fluffy snow. Now, when you get that little bit of snow, a couple inches of snow, wet snow, you'll see that splaying, which it's a heavy deer.
Right.
You get that splaying. That's the key.
So are you pretty much picking up any track you find, or I mean, I think what I was trying to ask you was that when you find a track, how can you tell how old that track has been there? Like how, you know what I mean? How long it's been since that deer's been through?
Yeah, well, I think it depends upon the snow. If it's fresh snow and you cut a track, if it's snowed the night before, you look at it, and, kind of look at the snow and see, when he's stepping out of it, when he's kicking the snow out, if it looks fresh, you know what I'm saying? You have to look at the track, look at, how he's kicking the snow out, look at it. If it's a small track, I go right by it. I keep moving.
Right.
If I think it's a doe, or if I see a track of a couple does, I'll even get on them, because sooner or later the buck is going to come into them does. So, like I said, we like to find the pockets of does, and we like to hunt around them, even if we have snow. And we find a pocket where we know there's 4, 5, 6 does, and it's rut time. Guess what? There's bucks coming in and out of those does all day long. So,
right.
And if we're in an area where we're finding a lot of does, we're just pussyfooting around them does and waiting to catch a buck, but making a mistake. Like I said, we don't. Some of the areas we've hunted now, there's a lot of areas where you can't leg it. Can't leg it. I mean, the last couple of years, it's been mostly just me and Randy hunting. So and it makes it tough to be able to get picked up and really, sometimes we'll leave the vehicle one spot, jump out of the woods here, hunt a whole range all the way across. So it's cat and mouse. I mean, mostly the last, I would say 5 years, we're concentrating on the pockets of does.
Right. Yeah, find the does, you'll find the bucks.
Exactly.
So
Right, but yeah, but you do come across these big bucks that are traveling,
right.
and once you see that, boy, you're off. You're trying to catch up to him. So you got to read it, whether he's wandering or is he looking to bed down, or is he just feeding? Is he traveling? Is he cutting in and out of does? You just have to read what they're doing.
So as far as like the continued increase of posted property, is that a lot of people that are coming up from the city and stuff that's buying up property, or is it just people that live up there that are starting to post their property?
I think a mixture of both. I think mostly since 9/11, a lot of people came out of the city. They bought up here. I think a lot of people now are able to work from home.
Right.
I think there's an influx of a lot of outsiders moving to the areas that aren't hunters, that don't understand our tradition. I think there's locals that do post, which, hey, that's their priority. I think there's a lot of baiting going on. I mean, when you shoot a buck back in the woods 2 miles and you've got him open and he's full of corn,
Right.
there's an issue.
Yeah.
And I think the issue is a lot of I think a lot of guys are taking the easy route and sitting in their stands and baiting. And it's unfortunate that they're not legging it and learning the tradition of tracking and still hunting. So there's an issue with that going on. When you're back 2 to 3 miles and you shoot a nice buck, you got him open and he's full of corn. It's not right.
Yeah, I mean, we've even seen that down where we hunt, and obviously a deer down our way, there's cornfields somewhere, but they're picking up stuff as far as food sources that aren't really naturally occurring there. I mean, they're getting into some of these food plots and stuff. I mean, it's hard to hunt a deer that's feeding on food plots when what you have access to is hardwood timber. You're trying to hunt a deer that's feeding on acorns, but they're over in the neighbor's field, eating on brassicas or clover or anything like that. I mean, same thing up there. If somebody's got a corn pile, half a mile to a mile away from the state land, that's where the deer's going to go to. Eventually they'll know that food source is there, and that's going to be preferred to them.
Exactly.
Right. That's what's happening though. It's bringing in all the does down
Right.
to where the feed is, and these does are hanging down there. So
Right.
these bucks come down and they find a hot doe, and boom, they're staying with that doe, and then these guys are coming in and shooting at night, shooting these bucks at night with these does that are over piles of corn, apples, carrots, you name it.
Right.
Yes,
You know-
and it's gotten bad the last 5 years. I've noticed.
The worst part. The worst part of the whole thing is it's almost like the game enforcement is non-existent. Very rarely on the state land do we get checked by an NCON officer.
Right.
In the last 5 years, we've been checked one time, and that was by a forest ranger. It wasn't even a game warden.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Those guys are stretched thin.
Oh, they are.
They're stretched wicked thin, and they got big areas, and
Yeah.
they're getting calls here and there. Those guys, their hands are tied.
Oh, yeah.
I know the guys that work our areas, they're good guys. They do their job. I think they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the laws are now, it's like if I write a ticket for this guy, nothing happens.
Right.
So, their hands are tied. They know. But, it's just my whole thing is I just wish some of the younger guys would, start putting the miles on, air it out, learn how to be a woodsman, use the compass, go back in the woods and kill your buck, and do it the traditional way. Learn how to do it and have some fun. I just think a lot of guys, there's a lot more stand guys, which I understand too. If somebody owns 30, 40 acres, they got a nice little quiet spot, they put a stand up, they're seeing deer. Hey, that's great. It's just not my cup of tea to sit in the stand, but guys do it and they're successful, and I'm not going to knock them, but I think what bothers us guys is when we're back in the woods humping it, and you knock down a nice buck and you got him open and it's full of corn.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that comes with it. I mean, when these people are posting all these lands, and then you get people that post these lands, they're baiting. They're just bringing the deer in because there's more posted land, and now they say, well, hey, nobody's going to come on my land or this, that, so I'm going to bring these bucks, these does in, and just shoot my buck for the season.
right.
Yeah.
Another big issue that you run into is you'll get a piece of property that's posted that nobody hunts, and it's like a safety zone. These deer get in these pockets where nobody can even touch them, and they'll stay there. I mean, it's nothing for a big buck to figure out, hey, I can go over here and lay down here, and the does are over here. I got food close to me. I'll lay here until deer season's over. Nobody will see me until January.
Right. Yeah. It's changed the dynamics of hunting from when you used to hunt back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, right in the 70s. But starting in the 80s, late 80s and 90s, it just was an influx of people that just posted land, and
Right.
you're having problems accessing the state land,
Right.
Right.
and that makes it real difficult too.
Yeah, some of the state land that we hunt, the access to get into it is starting to get rough as far as the roads, because the state
Right.
doesn't maintain any of these roads. So, I mean, you can hunt it still, don't get me wrong, but it makes it a lot tougher to get into where you want to be.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we used to hunt areas too where we could go back on 30,000 state acres, state land, but we might want to come out 3-4 miles away and hunt that whole track all the way across. But we can't get out on the other side because somebody might have a quarter of an acre posted to get down to the road
Right.
where you could shoot out.
Right.
Because of that, we've lost access to a lot of areas where we used to be able to hunt that whole range across, say north to south or south to north, and punch out, hit the road. Not anymore.
No.
No.
The other thing about all of this is, I don't, the land up there is primitive, so there's no logging, and the undergrowth is crazy in some areas, and you're getting more and more the growth is just so thick, these swamps, and there's no clear cuts, and you're trying to hunt these pockets of thick stuff, and these bucks love those pockets because nobody bothers them. And they just lay down in it, and you'll never see them.
No, they let you walk right by them.
No.
Right.
Then if you do jump them, when you're shooting at them, all you're getting is bits and pieces of them.
Yeah.
So, you're not getting an open shot at them. You're getting bits and pieces of them. So you gotta be at one hell of a shot to take down one of these running bucks and try to pick an opening to shoot them. And boy, we've done it a lot.
I think that's one of the biggest downfalls with New York State is, the game management is subpar, but the timber management. There is no timber management in the Adirondacks, which is a major downfall. Down where I hunt, they did some selective cutting, maybe about 5 years ago, and that place was on fire for 2-3 years after that. And now it's getting back to the point where it's gotten so thick. It's more of an advantage to the deer than it is to us. But all the briars came up. You started getting these saplings growing in. All that stuff is great for not just deer, but it creates nesting habitat for your grouse, your turkeys. Gives cover for your cottontails. I mean, up there, a lot of the Adirondacks years ago were great for snowshoe hare hunting. Now it's not because there's no habitat for them.
Yeah.
Right.
So they've done more damage than anything by not allowing timber management up there.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I think the state needs to open their eyes and do some sectional logging, create some revenue, create some jobs. There's so much overgrown timber. Why not start logging some of these areas? Log 20 acres in this area, or 50, and move on to a different spot.
Right. Nobody's saying that we should cut down the entire forest, but they should be doing some selective cutting, even if that means go in there and take out, maybe 500 trees, just to open up the area a little bit to allow new growth to come in.
Exactly.
Right. Right. And like you said, it's not only does it help the deer, but it helps the other habitat that's in there too. So it's an overall positive thing for the environment and for the game.
Yeah.
And that speaking of your private land up there, if you're on private land, you can still do timber management. So if you've got a guy, or if you've got a tract of land that's owned by a timber company up there, obviously that's going to be some better habitat for these deer to go to if they're cutting on timber management lands.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that does happen up there quite a bit.
Yeah.
You got these private crops, and then you see these deer going into these posted lands, private land. You see it.
Yes. And they're logging them. They're cutting them. They're cutting them heavy. They're taking a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they are.
They're wiping some areas out. But they know more about it than me. But like you said, once that new growth starts up, look out, because it's a feeding frenzy, and the deer just they love them areas, and because of that type of logging, I think it's taken a lot of deer off the state land, have came down off the mountains.
Right.
They're down lower into these areas where there's better feed, because the smart bucks, they go back in here, we kill them back in there deep. But the majority of your pockets of does and all that are down in those fringe areas, or down there where the feed is, because there's no feed back up on these mountains.
Right. I mean, as far as the kind of woods you're hunting in, are you hunting evergreens or is it hardwoods?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
So, are you finding patches of oaks up there ever, or is it mostly beech?
Yeah, most of the oaks in our areas are, I don't know, Randy, probably 2,000 feet,
Right.
and down.
Right.
There is some beech, but some of
Sporadic.
those I don't know if there's a disease with the beech or what it is.
So-
But we just don't see a lot of beech nuts.
It's called beech blight. It's it kills the beech trees. If you look at the trees, they get like almost like the bark kind of bubbles up on the tree,
Mm-hmm.
and it kills the tree. I mean, down where we hunt, there's beech trees there, but very rarely do we ever see any beech nuts on them. They'll drop the shell, but most of the time the shell is empty. There's no meat in it or anything like that.
Yeah, there's no meat. Exactly.
Right.
We got some red oak, some white oak in some areas, and we'll get into those areas. If there's a good crop, we'll hunt in them or just above them. But I don't think we've had a real mass. We haven't had a lot of acorns in quite a few years.
Last year I think was one of the worst years I've seen in recent memory as far as acorn crop. There was the acorns were non-existent. Now I remember about 3 or 4 years ago walking in the woods. You couldn't even walk in the woods without stepping on them. It was unbelievable. The ground was covered with acorns. Well, that was probably, I bet you that was, might even been 5 years ago. And when you have a year like that, that's almost harder than when there isn't any acorns, because the deer don't have to have a set pattern. They can go wherever they want because there's so many acorns.
Exactly.
Right.
They're tougher.
Yeah.
They're tougher to find, tougher to kill. No doubt.
Oh.
But it's with us guys. We've all been doing it many years. Like I said, it's getting tougher, but we grind it out every year, and one of us guys usually kills a decent buck every year. We pass on several bucks every year, spikes, crotches, sixes. We let them go. But every year we see a couple good ones. Sometimes you don't get a crack at them. You may see bits and pieces, but we're good for 1 or 2 decent bucks every year. But like I said, age and injuries, I think have definitely slowed me down.
Now, as far as a target buck you're looking for, are you looking for something that's got a lot of headgear, or are you looking for a deer that's like 200 pounds plus?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think when we were younger, we liked them, them big, fat, heavy bucks.
Yep.
It's nice to see a lot of horns too, but beggars can't be choosers. I mean, we're just, I think we've realized that we ain't got the pep in the step.
Right.
And we're having to hunt smarter, and we're having to shoot in and concentrate on the pockets, of the doe. We're, finding some herds of does, and then we get in those areas that we're seeing good buck sign. We're concentrating more, looking for rubs, scrapes, seeing what some of the trail cameras are doing. And if we find an area where there's a few good bucks, then we're putting our time in that area until one of us kills them.
Right. Yeah. And back to what I was saying, how thick stuff. When you see a deer, all you're getting is bits and pieces of this deer. And, you'll see a tine, you'll see, just a couple times, and then you're going, geez, is that a 10-pointer? And you're trying, it's a quick decision. It's so quick because you only get that bits and pieces. Not only is it a quick decision, but when you have to shoot, you're only getting a small opening to get a bullet in, and it seems like it's more and more of that. You're not getting a good clean shot.
Yes, exactly. And when that happens, like the buck I shot last year, I saw some legs coming, saw the body. My first instinct was get to a tree. I've always learned, get to a tree. If I got to step 5 feet left, right, I get behind the tree because I always put a shoulder against it, brace my gun on that tree. It's fun. You get worked up, you get pumped up. Here comes a buck. You're seeing bits and pieces, and like Randy said, you may have a little 6-inch opening after you see him coming through. You're trying to see what he's got for a rack on him, and you might have just a little 6-inch area where you got to stick a bullet in that area to hit him. So you've got to have a good brace. So you've got to brace your gun. There's times when you get caught out in the open. You may jump a buck. He's running away from you. You got to bang away. Obviously you're not going to get a brace. But if you got the moment to step a foot, 2 foot, brace your gun against the tree. If you got to brace your shoulder, whatever. It's just, it's going to help you take that buck out with one shot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, from when you first see that movement until you shoot, you see the antlers or you see the big body. There's only 10 seconds, maybe less, and you got to pull that trigger. There's a lot going through your mind, and just through experience, you know how to go about.
What are you guys using out there for rifles?
Just to see deer, but when you do see them, to pick out, is it a good buck? Does it have good antlers? And then boom, you got 10 seconds, and that's all you got.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not talking jump behind a big tree. I mean, even if you got a 4 or 5 inch sapling, something to wrap your hand around, brace your stock or your gun on it.
Right.
Wrap your hand around it, lay your gun on your wrist, on your hand, whatever you got to do to be able to get a good, clean shot and take that buck out with that first shot. Knock him, hit him, knock him down right there and get it over with. And that comes from experience of missing bucks. Maybe getting a little too excited and shooting a little too fast if that buck's coming at you and he don't see you, let him keep coming. It increases your odds. Let him keep coming. If he's not stopping and sniffing and he's just coming along and you can see he's getting closer to you, he's giving you a little better shot. You might have a few more openings up ahead if he keeps coming. It's, use that type of stuff to your advantage.
So as far as your setup for a rifle, what are you guys using out there?
Geez, I'm still using. My father gave me a 30-06 Remington semi-automatic 7400. He gave me that gun. I would say it was 1974, and I still have that same gun.
Yep.
But I also have a backup gun, same model, same type carbine, short barrel. And just in case, you slip and fall and you hit your scope, you hit your gun, then you got a backup to where you use your backup while your other gun, you're trying to zero in on it again. And so you always you should have a backup gun.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think all of us guys at one time used to use semis. Randy still uses a semi. At one time I went to a lightweight 7mm08 700 mountain rifle, which was light, bolt action. I liked it. It was a good gun. And then I ended up going with the 760 pump. I just like that because I feel I can follow up a lot quicker if I have to with that pump. The bolt, seems a little slower. But I like the bolt. It's very light. But I also like the pump too. It feels good in my hand, and it's a tool. I use my gums. I don't care if I scratch them, nick them.
Right.
I mean it's a tool. I keep it clean. You got to keep it clean. That thing is just it's out there for one thing, and that's to fill the freezer.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, when you're younger, you got to shoot these different types of guns, semi, bullets, pumps, and you got to feel whatever's comfortable for you. Stick with it. Practice with that gun. Use that gun. But stick with it. Get confident. Shoot a lot, and just feel comfortable with that gun that you choose. But the main thing is different types of guns. Whatever different calibers, whatever. Just use that.
Yeah, whatever works for you.
Yes.
All right, guys, we're getting close to an hour, so wrap this up. Appreciate you guys jumping on the podcast with me and talking about your experience up there in the Adirondacks. Kind of diving into how much things have changed over the last 30 to 40 years. Long before my time, but I know it's changed just from listening to stories from the guys that I hung with, so greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Good luck.
Okay, thank you, you too.